episode is brought to you by Bones Coffee Company. You can forget about boring coffee when you drink Bones Coffee. Not only do they offer a variety of flavors such as strawberry cheesecake and maple bacon, they are a family-owned company that puts great detail not only in their coffee, but in the artwork that comes on each individual bag. Bones Coffee has a coffee club that will deliver your favorite coffee to your door every month. If that wasn't enough, they also have some amazing swag to offer. Check out Bones Coffee Company today. I'll have my affiliate links in the show notes for you. Hi guys, we are talking about another disturbing case out of Fredericktown in Missouri. And this time we're talking about a 26-year-old man named Timmy Dees. Again, we are talking about a gentleman who didn't live in this area, who had a friend who drove him into this area. And then all of a sudden, this person winds up dead. And nobody can tell them why, nobody can tell them what happened, and nothing makes sense. And so this is the case that we're talking about tonight. Tonight, I have two co-hosts on the line with me. I have Cricket Andrews, a fellow crime writer and victims advocate. How are you, Cricket?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I've also got my fellow researcher, Tammy. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Well, I don't know, guys, but we started out doing the Durante Martin case out of Fredericktown. I guess it's Fredericktown, no less, Fredericktown, Missouri, in Madison County. And we were disturbed to see how many cases out of this county were. It just points flat out. I'm not sure if you would want to call it corruption or just incompetence. But these cases so far, we've got 12 or 15 on our list, all having to do with this area. Every one of them are just as disturbing as the other. None of them are being investigated properly. And you have armchair sleuths like us who seem to know a little bit more about police procedure than what law enforcement is doing. So it's very disturbing. I'll go over it real quick, just the basics. His name was Timmy Dees. He was 26 years old. He traveled to Fredericktown with a friend named Caleb. Caleb was a friend he'd known from childhood, but he wasn't necessarily real good friends with him right then. I mean, they had kind of separated a little bit, but they were still friends. On February 28th, 2022, he was driven into Fredericktown with his friend Caleb. Later that morning at 4:40 a.m., 911 got a phone call from Timmy Dees' phone saying that he was afraid for his life. He was running. His friend was threatening him and chasing him. And the phone pinged at County Road 277 in Madison County. And the police arrive 8 minutes later, according to the document that we've seen. They arrive within 8 minutes, and Timmy Dees is nowhere to be found. But instead of looking for Timmy Dees, they arrest a man named Trevor, who happened to be there at that same location, who had warrants out for his arrest. They take Trevor in, arrest him, and take him to jail. They just seem to forget about the phone call by Timmy Dees. They don't ever look for him. They don't ask any questions. They just arrest this gentleman. They go, and then here 6 weeks later, you've got the mother pounding on the doors, trying to get them to look for her son. They said, well, he's of age. He's not missing. Maybe he ran off, and so this mother has gone through this for months on end. She is fighting to get the police to do something, and then on July 21st, 2022, so 5 months later, almost to the day, less than 200 yards away from where his cell phone last pinged, where the law enforcement officer showed up 8 minutes after the phone call, less than 200 yards away, this man's body's found. And they say his death is undetermined. They won't give her any answers, and they basically try to close the case on the mother. And so there are so many things on this case. There's so many rabbit holes to go down. First thing I want to address is there is no 911 call recording. because they've given a couple different reasons why. One of them, they didn't have the money to get the system. Another one, that lightning struck it and they hadn't got it repaired. They've given 2 or 3 answers, but for some reason law enforcement did not have a recording of the 911 call. And then also another procedure that everyone knows, nobody stayed on the call with Timmy until the officer showed up. So you've got a person calling saying that he's being chased and that he's being threatened by his friend and he's terrified for his life. He calls. Nobody stays on the line to talk to him. The officer shows up and doesn't even look for him. So let's start with that chaos. Cricket, how does that sit with you?
Not well at all, being somebody who has been on search calls so backwards that they didn't even ask who called 911. Like, there's no questions asked from the police officer at that house whatsoever regarding the 911 call or Timmy. He just arrested Trevor, and that was that.
Mm-hmm. He arrested Trevor because Trevor had outstanding warrants.
Yes.
And he didn't have outstanding warrants for murder or bank robbery or something that, oh my gosh, we've been chasing this guy for 62 years and we finally caught him. I'm going to grab him. I'm going to call somebody else to find Timmy. Nothing. I mean, there's no random logic to it whatsoever. You can't find any logic in this whatsoever.
And when they say that when the police officer came, Timmy was running for the fence, that doesn't make sense either. If I called 911 because I felt in danger, I'm going to be running to the police, not away from them. Right. So there's another red flag right off the bat.
Well, and that was Caleb's story. The police officer, in their little bit of a report that I seen, he doesn't state that he's seen someone run over the fence. He just he just comes there and he locates Trevor. Trevor has warrants out for his arrest, so he arrests him. He takes him off, and nobody ever mentions Timmy whatsoever in that report.
Because I believe that if the police officer had seen someone running or trying to climb a fence, he would have got him.
Maybe. Like, I don't know.
Why are you running? Did you do something? You know what I mean?
Well, maybe. I'm thinking, was this officer smoking dope too? Because nothing.
Right? I was going to say, at least that's what a police officer should do. Like, why is this guy running away? Is he hiding something?
This is going to be a good show. We're 2 minutes in and I'm already asking if a police officer is smoking dope. Oh my gosh. But that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, how does this make sense to any rational person? You go there because there's a person calling in danger, and then you don't check on the person who called and said they were in danger. And from what I've seen, I believe it was 6 weeks before the mother ever got law enforcement to look for them. Tammy, what do you think about this?
They said it was unusual for him to involve the police in anything too, so he must have been really, really frightened to call the police.
Well, he's in a place that he doesn't know, with nobody, the one person that he used to know. Basically he's brought into this town by someone he used to know, doesn't know quite as well as he used to, as little kids. And it's the same situation as Durante Martin. He was brought in by someone he used to know, and then all of a sudden he ends up dead, and the police aren't doing anything about it. And this is the same thing that's happened to Timmy Dees. In February of 22, the mother has to come in and literally camps out on the courtyard lawn, trying to get them to pay attention to her. And it's like 6 weeks, I think, before she finally convinces them to do anything to help her. And she's sitting there with big signs. You can see them on Facebook. She's got big signs, poster boards that she's made with her son's face. People are driving by, coming home from church and everything else, and they stop and ask her about it because they've never heard. And you're talking about a town of 4,000 people, so it ain't no big town. It's a little bitty place. It's a
and just the fact that he called 911, like Tammy said, his normal was if he was in trouble or needed help, he would call a friend.
Right, now and he had no one.
Friend but
Yeah.
he's in danger from this friend.
Exactly. So who's he going to call? He didn't call somebody, he didn't call his mom to come get him from an hour away, wherever she was. He didn't call, he called the police because he felt like he was threatened enough
Yes.
that he couldn't wait an hour for his mom to come get him, or he couldn't, he didn't have anybody else in that place to call. And then the one person that, his tax dollars paid to call weren't there to help him. And so what I find disturbing is that his body was found less than 200 yards away. I've heard one report that said 187 feet, 187 yards, and another one that said 184 yards. So I'm thinking, that's a ridiculously short amount of space. Was that kid out there? Did he see law enforcement? Was he still there when law enforcement showed up and somebody was trying to keep him quiet while the police were there? Because see, there was 3 people that were in that location that night. There was Caleb, Trevor, and Mike. Now, Mike was an older gentleman, and he had smoked some dope or whatever, and he had passed out. And then when the law officer was asked about Caleb, who is the friend that brought Timmy to the place, he said, "Oh, Caleb must have been in the house. I didn't see him." So the officer didn't even check on the friend who is supposedly be there either. So the officer doesn't know where Caleb was because the officer didn't go inside and do his due diligence to see who else was in the house. For all he knew, Timmy could have been in the house. He didn't care. He got sidetracked by this person who had a warrant and went after him and then forgot everything else. So if that wasn't disturbing enough, there are so much that we can go into in this case. At one point, we are talking about a very specific sheriff who kind of seems to have a very laxed attitude towards anything to do with the drug scene. So if you have any connection via someone else through the drug scene and you get hurt in this county, I guarantee you're not going to get the help you need, because they basically have the attitude the druggies will take care of themselves. And unfortunately, Timmy had a drug problem in his past, but he was getting himself cleaned up and he was trying to get his life put back together. He had lost his older brother within a year before this to a overdose, and it really shook him to his core. He was trying to get himself put together and trying to take care of his mom and emotionally and constantly calling her every day. And he was trying to get better and not have these problems anymore, and so just because he had something in his past doesn't mean that he didn't deserve the help that his tax dollars paid for. He had a good paying job and paid taxes, and so he was somewhat stable and he was doing better, and yet his tax dollars went down the drain. I mean, because your tax dollars are supposed to go to pay for your police protection, and these officers didn't do their job to protect him in any way, shape, or form. And so one thing we found disturbing in this case was when the mother did finally pitch enough of a fit that she got them to check out some, and do some little searches and things. For one, law enforcement was only involved in one of 4. We know there was at least 4 searches done. There was only one time that the law enforcement was involved, and they took over everything and they shipped everybody in one bus and they shipped them to a specific location. Didn't tell them where they were, didn't tell them, what they were, where they were searching or nothing. They just took them where they wanted them to search. And I've never been boots on the ground in a search for a missing person, but Cricket, I know you have. Is that standard procedure for a law enforcement officer, for one, to put you in a bus and not tell you where you're going, and then also to literally make threats and say, you stay within your bounds and don't step on our toes, or you're I can't remember how she said it, but basically she's like, you're going to look where I tell you to look, and you don't step outside of these limits. Is that normal?
No, that's totally not the way you conduct a search. We have a meetup spot. Now I saw the area. So in my mind, and I'm just doing this from my mind, they would have a base camp set up maybe across the street. But everybody would meet up. There is a map. Everybody has to sign in, and they're assigned to an area to search. Nobody gets driven anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You
Well, I found
you
it was
go
odd
to
that the law officers, like, you stay. I can't remember how she said it, but basically she said don't, you stay in your lane, and you don't step outside of this, and I'm sitting here going, that's ridiculous. And then they brought in dogs in one of those things, and I believe the mother is actually the one that got the dogs to come in, the cadaver
Yes.
dogs. The police didn't do that, and she said that they were actually angry with her and aggravated with her for bringing in the dogs. And the dogs signaled on 2 storage units, number 5 and number 6, and they opened number 5. But then I was talking to Tammy about this. The sheriff literally blocked the door to Unit 6 with her vehicle and said they weren't allowed to open it. And I was talking to Tammy earlier, and I was thinking, is there a scenario of any crime that you've ever heard that is a logical thing to do? I mean,
in my
Cricket,
opinion,
Tammy, have you ever heard of a sheriff saying you can't look in here?
to me, that sounds like she's hiding something. She doesn't want something found in there. Because I've been on quite a few searches and have never had that kind of situation come up.
Tammy, do you remember the reason why she said it was? I can't
Didn't
remember.
she say they'd already searched it?
Well,
Yeah,
that's
they
what
did lie
came out.
about
They
it.
came out later and said that they searched them both. But the mother's like, I was there, and she blocked the door, and she wouldn't let us in there to search that one. And it was something along the lines of that one was owned by a security officer at the school, or I don't know, some BS, nothing that even made sense.
It doesn't matter who it's owned by. If the
Right.
person who owned it gave permission,
Right.
that's all that's needed.
Well, and see, that was one of the things in one of the interviews with her that I heard. She said that they had the owner on the phone, and the owner says, absolutely. He said, if you have to ram the door with your truck, he's like, I'll buy a new door. If you think your son's in there, you get in there. And still, the sheriff blocked them from doing this. And so we find that that's disturbing. Then we also find that, okay, there was this whole scenario. Tammy, you might help me remember, because I talked to you about this. There was a whole scenario where at one point, and we're never really told the order of events here, but about 1 o'clock or so, 1:30, somewhere in the morning, before he was the 911 call, there was an incident at a gas station where supposedly there was gas that wasn't paid for, and Timmy got $160 out of his ATM at cash, and he also bought drinks for everyone.
Well,
So
the report I read said that he actually played those video slot games with the money too.
well,
I
I watched a video with his mother who said that she's got receipts, and they probably don't even know she has them, but she said she has receipts that shows that he bought all of them around of Gatorades, and he got cash, and so she's like, I don't know how the gas didn't get paid for, or because to me that all doesn't make sense. If you're buying gas, you pay for it at the pump, or you go in and pay in advance. They don't they usually make you pay in advance if you're not paying at the pump, but the whole concept with that is, when they found him 5 months later, it was only 5 months, somehow he was already down to skeletal remains. He had no hair, no skin, nothing, and his teeth were different. The mother said that there was a tooth missing here and there. His permanent retainer was missing. They never found that. But then when she goes and when she actually got to view the remains at I believe the coroner's office or wherever it was, she took pictures. She said because she couldn't believe anything that they told her at this point. So she was going to take her own pictures. And she said what was so disturbing, all of his teeth were put back. It was like they had filled them back in for her. And she's like, why would you do that? Why wasn't that put on the autopsy? Why wasn't this, why are you messing with his teeth? And so it's just random odd things like that. His left hand was missing and I don't know, something else. But he was still supposedly fully clothed and his wallet was in his pocket. So I find that that's disturbing, especially considering the fact that, again, she has receipts to show that the debit card was tried again the next day at 9:00 in the morning. Now, but it didn't go through. It was declined. Now, if that's the case, how did that debit card get back in his wallet in his back pocket in that field? You know what I mean?
Nothing makes sense about this.
So to me, I'm sitting here going, if that's the case, I also want to know where's the $160. Was the $160 still in his wallet? I guarantee you it wasn't. I guarantee you he didn't spend that much money on all those Gatorades and everything. And if he had $160 when he walked out of that gas station, I want to know where it is. Was it still in his pocket?
Yeah, I think they showed like 3 bills. Not sure what they were, but it sure wasn't the full amount that he had.
$160 worth, And my thing is if that's true, that the debit card was tried again at 9:00 the next morning and declined, that tells me that there was some intent for robbery, because if Timmy was already gone, somebody stole his stuff and then put it back in his pocket. And the next thing is was he out there for the full 5 months, or was he stored somewhere else and then taken out there? And then also, does the body deteriorate that fast, in this area? Or was something chemically enhanced to create that? But so this is the case that we have so far. Tammy, I know you was doing some research on this. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, the location where he made the 911 call, wasn't that the property of one of the boys that was there, grandma's property? Mm-hmm. And was it Caleb, or was it the other boy that had a place fixed up in the barn where they were actually staying?
I'm not sure if that was Caleb or Trevor's place.
And I'm wondering if the body wasn't found on the grandma's property, or
no, they said it was 200 yards, just under 200 yards away, and it was on a judge's property.
Oh.
So that makes me think, okay, that's disturbing to find a dead body on a judge's property. So they said, well, that was just a coincidence, and he has since sold the property and moved to Florida and blah, blah, blah. But I'm sitting here going, still disturbing.
It is, because
everything about this case is disturbing. And so they actually went and got a second autopsy done. And I just got the verification from the mother just now, because I said, did you ever get results from the second one? And she said, yes, it's still undetermined. So she had to get an autopsy, and they still say it's undetermined. Of course,
but undetermined still means open, and they should be investigating it.
And see, that's the thing. As far as I can tell, they have told her this case is closed. And you can listen to online. They do have some things recorded where she's talked to some different law officers, and they said, look, we've checked everything, ma'am, and this is not a homicide. You can't just add stuff in if we don't find evidence. And all this stuff sounds so right. No, you can't add evidence where there isn't evidence, but you also can't discount all the questions.
Exactly. And they couldn't have any evidence because they didn't search. They did absolutely nothing. So how can they say anything?
Well, that's my next thing. And then this is something else. Those 3 people that he was with, we know that all of them have a history of drug use, and I believe even Trevor, I'm believing him too, but I believe all of them were high that night. And then when it all comes down to it, the officers, and they have this recorded so you can listen to it online. The officers talked to these 3 people, these 3 men, and these 3 men, none of their timelines match up to each other. None of them say exactly the same thing. None of them, none of them, their stories don't even align with each other. And so you've got 3 men who were the last 3 people who seen Timmy alive, and none of them can get their stories together. Now, I don't know if Mike ever got a lie detector test, but I know Caleb and Trevor were supposed to take lie detector tests. One of them took it and failed miserably. The other one said he would take it and then never showed up. And so you've got 3 people here who basically this whole investigation hinges on what they said, and they don't, if you listen to it, they don't have one coherent sentence that makes sense, much less everything they're trying to say. At one point, Caleb, I believe it was Caleb he was talking to, said, well, I think he ran off to Las Vegas or something. And the officer says, well, does he have money for that? Well, no, but I think, he was digging in the trash and he found this box that has, that had everything you needed to steal someone's identity, a birth certificate and driver's license and all this stuff. And so he had what he needed if he decided he wanted to run away. And I'm like, okay, you're definitely on drugs if you think you're going to find all of that in a box in the bottom of your dumpster,
Right.
but it's like while he was talking, he was just weaving this story, that story. Well, maybe he's doing this, maybe he's doing that, or he's doing, and so his narrative changes 2 or 3 times in the one conversation. He doesn't have one solid story and then change it later. He's changing it as he goes. And yet, this is something I was talking to you guys earlier. A law officer, while he's talking to a suspect, might play along to get more information. Oh, I'm okay, yeah, whatever. But then they don't go fill out the report and write everything this person said down as if it's gospel and then close the case. But this is what these people are doing. They're like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm like, how does that make sense? They didn't have one sentence that made sense. How did you make sense of that? And so I find it disturbing that the last 3 people that seen Timmy alive, they can't get their stories together and nothing's done about it. I don't like the fact that the mother has had to be there camping out on the lawn trying to beg for help. She's been told that she was a liar when she calls and gets some information. She has been ostracized. She's been left out there. She said there was times where the sheriff would just walk by her. She's sitting out there in the cold with a sign with her son and don't even have the audacity to say hello, come in, get out of the cold, let me bring you some coffee. Nothing, just walks past her like she's not there. But then this is something, this is kind of turning into a series. This is behavior that we have found in just a quick Google search, that this is behavior in this area that has continued for years. I found I just typed in the county's name, the town's name, and corruption. In 2005, let's see. In 2005, Farron Gwynn, 42, of Fredericktown, we're talking about a Madison County deputy of Fredericktown, was arrested on 4 counts of felony stealing and 1 count of misdemeanor stealing. All of this is allegedly because nothing ever come of this, it looks like. But basically, he was charged with stealing because their inventory in police evidence was disappearing. Okay, that's 2005. And this is, I believe, in, let me see if I can find the date on this, 2010. Fredericktown's top police officer facing 16 counts of felony sex charges involving 3 young boys. Okay. Are we seeing a pattern here? Yes, this was, 10 years, 2010 and 2005, all these years ago, but I'm showing you a pattern of behavior in this area. It seems as if obviously the law enforcement's not doing their job, but it's a pattern of behavior that's been established for decades. They're not being held accountable for what they do either. It's just complete lawlessness. We talked about in the Durante case that there was a person that had a business across the street from the sheriff's office, and that business had been robbed 6 times and nothing was done. I'm thinking, if you have a business across the street from the sheriff, you would think that that would be a little bit safer place to have your business. But this is a pattern of behavior. And I find, it's real easy to say, well, the sheriff's the problem. The sheriff was the first woman that was the first woman sheriff that was voted in by a general election, and they made a big stink. She's the first woman sheriff. Woohoo! We're not sexist. We voted in a woman sheriff. And I'm sitting there going, but is she qualified for the job? It doesn't look like she's doing her job. I don't care if it's a woman, if it's a man, if it's a unicorn. They can't do the job. Get them out. But then we find it's even more disturbing when you come across it. The only person that can fire a sheriff in the state of Missouri is the coroner. And guess what? She's the deputy coroner. She's also over the 911 dispatch. So going back to Timmy, someone should have stayed on that call with him until that officer showed up 8 minutes later. Was it the sheriff that was supposed to be the 911 dispatch, which is also the deputy coroner, which is also, is she also the banjo player down on the corner? I'm like, can you not hire more than one person to do these jobs?
There's nobody overseeing her.
No.
And it says a lot right there that the business across the street from the sheriff's department getting robbed that many times. That says a lot right there that, people know nothing's going to happen to them if they feel that's safe to rob a house or business right across that many times. That says a lot right there.
It does. Timmy, what are you thinking?
You done a study on the crime rate, and it was 50% above the national average.
Something like that. Yeah. It was like 1 in 32 people in that area. You're going to be a victim of some sort of crime. And that is higher than, and it said higher than most states, most cities of all sizes. So
what I saw today said it was more than 50% above the norm.
Is that what it was? See, I looked that up for the
Durante 50% both, yeah.
Yeah. I looked it up for the Durante thing, but I didn't look it up for this one. But to me, I'm sitting here going, this is horrible. This is you think that this stuff doesn't happen in America anymore. You'd think that we are, this is 2024. We have all of these, forensic sciences and all this. Well, what good does it do if you have a department who can't even keep their equipment to record a 911 call? If all else fails, you can record a 911 call on a freaking phone. Just put it on speakerphone and hit record, and you could record it that way if you had to. I mean, heck, I'm from the 80s. Take a freaking boom box, set it on there, and record it. I mean, I'm being facetious, but I'm thinking there is no good reason why you cannot record a 911 call. Now, the standard equipment may not be available because it's broken down, but you could find a way to record it. I found the statistic we was talking about last time. It says What is the crime rate of Fredericktown, Missouri? With the crime rate of 31 per 1,000 residents, Fredericktown has one of the highest crime rates in America compared to all communities of all sizes, from the smallest towns to the very largest cities. One's chance of becoming a victim of either violent or property crime here is 1 in 32. And I'm saying this is they're comparing that to places like LA. They're comparing that to Chicago. They're comparing that, and I'm sitting here going, how long is this going to go? How many, and so far, just from what we've seen, what is it, 12 cases on that list or 15? Do you remember?
At least 12 or 13.
Yeah. On that list that we found so far, and that cases that all fall within Fredericktown and Madison County. And so I'm sitting here going, if you have that many cases that you can't handle, perhaps it's time to call in the FBI. Perhaps it's time to bring in somebody that can clean up the corruption in that area. Maybe it's just freaking time to bring in somebody that can show you how to do standard police work. Maybe you just need some education. Maybe you just need some classes. Bring somebody in to teach how to do a better job. I don't think that's what they want, though.
No.
If that's what they wanted, that's what they would have done. So kudos on you for electing the first female sheriff, but who gives a crap? If you're not going to do your job and all these people are going to end up dead in your county and you're just going to write them off, who cares? 2 points for you. You hired a woman. Whoop-de-doo.
What breaks my heart is the fact that the families are having to do the work of the police, and not just in Missouri. There's other states where this is craziness, but parents are collecting the evidence and securing the evidence, so that and praying that it gets to the point where we can shut these people down, because this is ridiculous. They're just not doing their job, and they're past. Oh well, the state trooper should have done that, or Madison County should have done that. They're just passing the buck because nobody wants to do anything.
Right.
And not only that, but they're being hostile towards the parents. And
yes.
Look into it.
Yeah.
Just.
Well, and see, that's what's so disturbing too. She tried to get an attorney to fight this, and the attorney was honest with her and told her, said, well, it's going to be at least $32,000. And then he said, your only other option is shout to the hilltops. He said, but I have to warn you that you might end up dead if you do. So to me, we live in a terrible society when a mother can't get help unless she has $32,000 cash. And her only other option is to scream it to the hilltops, and then she might risk her own life to do that. I'm like, we're not a third world country, but we sure as heck sound like one when you start studying these cases. I'm like, are we a third world country now? We're supposed to be better than that. We're supposed to have law enforcement. We're supposed to have somebody that double checks law enforcement. We're supposed to be a society of checks and balances. So when someone's not doing their job, there's supposed to be someone higher up that comes in and can fix it. But in this case, the higher up's the county, and then they're just as bad as everything else. And then you go to the FBI, which is really disturbing. The FBI, the way the laws are written, the FBI cannot come in unless the police department asks them to. And I'm sitting here going, well, then what the heck good is the FBI?
Yeah. And
I'm getting a little fired up here, but I'm like, what's the point then?
Yeah. And when they close a case and the case doesn't have a case number, that's a wall right there. Yeah. Trying to get that, because you need the case number to get people to look into it, but they make sure that wall is there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and when you don't have a case number, how do you look it up?
Exactly.
And then, there's all kinds of little tricks and things that they do to make it more difficult. So I'm thinking with this one with Timmy Dees, what's disturbing is this Timmy Dees is the second one we've covered, and we're talking about the same law enforcement that we talked about 2 weeks ago when we was covering Durante Martin. We're talking about the same small town. We're talking about most likely the same series of drug runners and providers and things. We're talking about the same community of things, and the same law enforcement. And so this is not the last case we're going to be talking about with this. We've got on that one list, I think we have 12 or 15, I can't remember, cases in this same area that have been written off and they're not doing their job. And I think I read somewhere that this is an election year. So I'm like, we need to scream this to the hilltops and get people to vote these people out.
Yes.
Because that's the only way you're going to get rid of a sheriff. Because if she's also the deputy coroner, who's going to fire her? And I'm not saying that if she does a good job, keep her around. I'm not saying a woman can't be a sheriff. I'm saying I don't care what gender you are. If you're not doing a good job, whatever your job is, you need to be fired and bring in somebody that's qualified to do the job.
And I wonder, another thing is, like, because of the way she is, maybe nobody dare run against her.
Well, yeah, if you're getting into these small town politics, who's going to run against them when the whole system is corrupt? Your own child is murdered and you can't get any justice for him. Who's going to feel secure enough to stand up against the system? Nobody. That's why this kind of stuff goes on for so long, because there's a fear factor there. When you literally see people around you get killed and nothing is done, all of a sudden your place of business getting robbed 6 times doesn't seem like that big a deal. When you've got a mother camped out on the front lawn with a poster boards of her with her missing son's picture on it and she's begging for help, all of a sudden your 6 robberies doesn't seem that important. You're like, well, how am I supposed to do anything? The only thing you can do is vote them out, because in this situation, all of the checks and balances are in the same corruption. And that's where the problem is. There is no one to check their behavior because they're all wrapped in together. So, Tammy, do you have anything else you want to add?
Well, I don't know what else can be added. I mean, it's nothing makes sense about this case. And I bet when we look into these other cases, we're probably just going to see the same thing over and over again. And
yeah, I think so. I think we're just going to keep rehashing old news, and that's a horrible way to put it. But in Durante's case, nothing made sense with him and nothing makes sense with Timmy Dees. And we've got, 10 more cases to cover all in the same area.
How many do we not know about?
Exactly. That's my next thing, because they have this thought that just because someone is addicted to drugs, that they're not a human anymore. And drugs are a horrible thing and they will destroy your life. They don't care who you are, what kind of family you come from. They'll destroy you no matter what. But you also have to remember, these are people's daughters and sons. These are people's mothers and fathers. These are people's sisters and uncles and aunts. These are human beings and somebody cares about them. And what would happen to you, you stuck up snob, if for some reason you got addicted to drugs and you couldn't get off of it and something happened to you? Would you like someone to just kick you over in the ditch and say, hey, you're not important because you got addicted to something you can't handle? I mean, this really, really fires me up because I'm sitting here going, there's still people, when did we become so arrogant that we can't see that if for just slightly different choices in our behavior, we could have ended up in the same place? Every day we're faced with choices, and one wrong choice can lead you down a path that can get you into some place like this. And then no one's going to care enough about you because you made the wrong choice. And now you're addicted to a substance and you can't get rid of it. And now you're not worthy of the police officer's attention, and that's what really, not only was this case and other cases we're going to talk about, but the mother was treated like crap too. I mean, there are on recordings where law officers who are supposed to be, you know, they're not counselors, they're not psychiatrists, but they are the first line of defense when it comes to victims advocacy. They're supposed to have a level of empathy and compassion for the people they're talking to. They may not be qualified to dive into the psychological problems and trauma they're facing, but they're supposed to show empathy. And we've got it on recording. 5 different times this mother has been talked down to, talked trash, flat out said she's lying. Who are you? And how dare you wear a badge and behave this way is what makes me angry. How dare you? That badge is supposed to be a badge of honor. It's supposed to mean something. It's supposed to be something that we can all trust and depend on. And how dare you wear it and behave that way?
We're supposed to have justice in this country, regardless of who the person was.
Exactly. We're not supposed to care about color of skin, gender, of religion. We're not supposed to care about those things. We're supposed to realize they're humans and do your job. Your job was to stay on that phone call until that officer got there and seen what was going on with Timmy. You were supposed to, when you got to that location, you were supposed to avoid the temptation of arresting somebody else and look for the person who made the call. That was what you were there for. Those were the 2 things that make or break this case. And in reality, if they had looked for Timmy instead of getting distracted by Trevor, then they may have found him alive and they may have saved his life. And that is what that badge is for. That's what that badge is supposed to stand for. And you just chucked it out the window and did your own thing. I don't think if that's the way your behavior is, you deserve to wear that. And I hope people of Fredericktown and Madison County vote your sorry butt out. It's not very nice. I may be getting close to Nancy Grace level here. I'm getting angry. I'm getting angry.
Well, somebody needs to get angry.
Somebody needs to do something. And that's what makes me so mad. I'm like, somebody has got to do something. How many more children are we going to lose to this county? And nobody's going to do anything.
And we need to stop judging people because of drug addiction. And I'm putting this out here for the first time. I am a recovered addict. And I've heard people say, well, they chose that life. Nobody chooses that lifestyle. There is something going on. There is pain. There is something.
How many millions of people do we have addicted to prescription drugs?
Yes. And that is a big reason for addiction in this country.
My father was an ex-drug addict and an ex-alcoholic. He got saved. He got his life changed around, and he has spent 45 years of his life as a pastor, a preacher, trying to teach other teenagers not to get into that lifestyle.
Yes. But
what if somebody had written him off and thrown him in the ditch and not done anything for him?
We have to stop seeing addicts as something bad and just washing our hands of them. We need to start stepping up and helping them. Yeah. Police especially.
Well, that's your job. If you don't like that part of your job, get a different job.
Mm-hmm.
That's my thing. If you don't want to do that job, find another one.
Exactly.
But anyways, well, I'm going to close this one here unless you guys have something else to say.
No, I'm good. I'm angry.
You're good and angry. Okay.
Yes.
Tammy, are you good and angry? If we're all good and angry, it's time to go.
I'm in agreement. We're all there.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll see you guys next time, guys. Thank you for signing on for this one.
Have a good night.
You too.